shredding the Constitution, taking away our wealth. But we're the men and women following freedom's trail, following where the truth leads. We will prevail.
We will prevail. This is Rick, Label MD, and for the theme song to stop. There we go. This is Rima E. Label MD. I am the medical director of the Natural Solutions Foundation, www.healthfreedomusa and www.globalhealthfreedom.org. And you are listening to the Dr. Rima Reports. With me, as always, is my co-host, Counsel Ralph Fusatola, who is not only a trustee of the Natural Solutions Foundation, but our counsel as well. Good morning, Ralph.
Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Rima. All right, I think we have our broadcast going, and hopefully it's also recording. But let's see what happens here. We have some interesting things happening on the program today, and I'm just working my way through some screens here. All right. Go ahead, Dr. Rima. We do indeed.
We have talking about radiation measurement and radiation realities. I have a question to ask you before we talk about the health freedom news of the week and talk with our guests. My question is this: how can an electric recording of the song that we use as our theme song get scratched and dented and banged as if it were a 33 1/3 revolutions per second vinyl record? How is that possible? Because it sounds...
Oh, Dr. Rima, I think we're losing you. Well, folks, let's see. Let's see if we can get her back. That's interesting. How can it possibly sound that way? Interesting. There you go. Dr. Rima, are you back? Yeah, we lost you as you were asking, how can a digital recording sound as though it's gotten scratched? That's a really interesting question. Maybe because somebody's interfering with your broadcast? Are you there, Dr. Rima? Oh, folks. Well, let's see. Yeah, it says that she's off. She says that she's off. Let me call the group again. We have our guest and Dr. Rima, hopefully. Well, maybe we don't have Dr. Rima. But hopefully we'll have our guest. If not, you get me for 2 hours talking. Dr. Rima and General Bert are in Santiago de Chile. They are there sourcing, as you probably all know, low radiation foods, something that we all want. Let's see what's going to happen. I guess the first question I have for you folks is, can someone on the chat let me know? It's good. Okay, good. We got our thing on good. We have our images going. That's nice. I hope we're recording. For some reason, the screen here doesn't tell me whether the recording is still working. All right, are you back on, Dr. Rima? Well, that's even weirder. That's weird. I don't know what's going on, folks. Let's see if I can add Dr. Rima to the call and then find out what's causing that. Well, we got to go down to Rima. Now that's on. That's stopped. Oh, now we're going to answer Dr. Rima. Okay. Hey, Dr. Rima. Okay.
Hi.
Hi. Now, I don't know which one.
Are we back on?
I think you're back on. I'm going to try to get Joe Jesson back.
Or maybe you've been on the whole time.
I have been. I was about to tell people about the... there you go again. We're losing you again. I was about... are you there, Dr. Rima? Can you hear me?
I'm here, and Good. I hear you.
Great. I was about to tell the folks about the Mazor PRM 9000 radiation monitor that we've gotten as part of our effort to help people understand what's going on in the world. The foundation has got its hands on a couple of radiation monitors. One wonderful, very high-powered device that you have that was donated to the foundation, and a couple of others that we've had to pay for. But I have this PRM 9000, and I thought what I would do is turn it on. I'm holding the key on to power on it. Now it's on. And we'll see. You'll hear a beep. folks, every once in a while. Every time you hear a beep, it means another little radioactive particle has passed through my home. And we've been studying it. It's been very interesting. I've had it for 24 hours. I've obviously been carrying it around with me. There is background radiation, as we all know. But what really surprised me in the past 24 hours were three discoveries. Number one was that the background is around 20 counts per minute, which is not much off from what other people report on Radiation Network. But if I bring the radiation counter over to the return...
Okay, I'm back.
Good. I was explaining about the radiation counter. If I bring it over to the return on our air conditioning system and hold it up to that filter, it goes from the 20 to 30 background. You hear it tweaking every once in a while. It goes up to 55 or thereabouts. So a noticeable increase, which means the whole house filter is in fact filtering out radioactive particles. The other thing I noticed was in driving over to the recycling center yesterday morning.
It also means...
Yep. Go ahead.
It also means that your lungs are filtering radioactive particles because the air filter is, in essence, mechanically breathing the same way that you are biologically breathing the air. So you may wave the guy, you're not encountering a particle at any particular moment.
I got that, Dr. Rima. You are breaking up. It keeps on saying that we're having internet connection problems. And what I discovered, in addition to
moving large volumes of air through the mechanical.
Yeah, we're losing you, Dr. Rima. We just lost you again. It's trying to get you back. The other thing I discovered, folks, was that while driving, I drove over to the recycling center. And okay, very good. You're back again, Dr. Rima. We've been losing you intermittently.
This is going to be a spotty connection because we're talking about important stuff.
Oh, obviously.
So
I'm going to see if I can get our guest back. I was just going to explain. Yes, go ahead.
The point is that your filter is acting like your lungs act, which means it's entrapping particles that are being trapped in the same way in your lungs. This is the reason why when people come to us, and several people have, saying, I have a water filter that will trap radioactive material and get it out of your drinking water, I respond, and I frustrate them very much, as you can attest, Ralph.
Yes, indeed.
I respond, okay, what do you do with the radioactive filter that you now create under your sink or in your shower? What exactly do you do to keep yourself from being irradiated by an increasingly dangerous radioactive emitter under your sink, in your shower, or wherever else you keep your water filter? And oh, by the way, how do you dispose of this radiation hazard? You see, March 11th, 2011 was the day that changed everything. It used to be if you wanted to filter your water or your air or had an air conditioner and the filter got dirty, you would either wash it or dispose of it. Now, handling or being near a filter that is concentrating radioactive particles is a significant health hazard. Disposing of it is a significant public health hazard. And oh, by the way, if your filter is accumulating hot particles, so is your body, so are your lungs. And when you eat food or drink water, so are your intestines and your stomach and your digestive apparatus. We live in a dangerous time, and Fukushima, I keep reiterating, is the day that changed everything.
It's true, Dr. Rima. It is the day that changed everything. That's for certain.
And you're seeing hot spots. You mentioned the hot spot on the way to the dump. Well, I've just been watching a video, and I'm going to Skype you the link so that you can put it up on the chat.
Excellent.
Apparently not able to continue to chat on. I don't know why. Here's the link, Ralph. It's about a nuclear contamination in Pennsylvania that shows how nuclear contamination really works. It's
Oh,
not
wonderful.
a happy thing to watch, but it's an important thing to watch.
Well, Dr. Rima, send that to me on Skype and I'll post it. And by the way, I didn't have a chance to finish the story. You alluded to the hot spot.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that's okay. As I was saying, I was driving over to the recycling center, and I noticed on the way there and on the way back, there was one little area where I was driving where there was a noticeable increase in the counts per minute, and went back down to normal. And then when I came back through the same little 100-yard long area by a hillside, the same thing happened. So there are natural spots of higher radiation.
No.
Tell me.
I'm sorry. You cannot assume that's a natural spot. You don't know that somebody making radium dials or watches or putting radium into or some other radioactive isotope didn't just go out there and dump their bucket of contaminated water or solvent. You don't know that.
That's true, and it could be right by the roadside. You're right, an old area.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, when I arrived at the recycling center, something else happened that was quite instructive. There was a heavy downpour, so I sat in the automobile waiting for the downpour to end before taking out my recyclables. And as I was sitting there with the Geiger counter clicking once in a while, I picked it up and put it up against the windshield, the inside of the windshield. And the count went, again, from about 20 to 30 counts per minute up to about 50. So the rain was clearly hotter than the background.
And that hot rain, now this is not physically hot. We got an email from a correspondent who said, yes, I can feel the increased heat from the rain in Los Angeles. And I wrote back to him and I said, it's more radioactive, but you cannot feel the heat. This is nuclear heat, and people have to understand that it's a metaphor. It's not a temperature increase at this level of dilution. It's dangerous, but it's radioactive. It's not thermally hot. So I wrote back to our correspondent and I said, the heat that you're feeling is imaginary, although the radiation is increasing. It's confused. The language is a little confusing to them. When we did the calculations yesterday of how many microsieverts you are receiving, what was that number? And then we'll talk about millisieverts. And as a matter of fact, we have a measurement expert who is one of our guests on the show today, Joe Jesson. I'm hoping he's there because this is a very important discussion. Just exactly how much radiation are you receiving in New Jersey? What was the number that we calculated, Ralph?
As I recall, it was up to 800 millisieverts a year, which is substantially higher than you get from things like the potassium in your bananas and stuff like that. And it's hard, though, to tell because further reading got me to understand that probably the radiation from food that people get is 1/10 of the total radiation that they're exposed to in a given year.
No. So, let me clarify, and I'm sure Joe will help with this if he's on.
Yeah, Joe, are you there? It says he's on.
Yes.
Oh, he is there. Hello. Yeah, we want to bring you in on this part of it, sure.
This
I'm
is
listening.
perfect. Let's introduce you, Joe. Tell our listeners who you are. Maybe you could give a background on yourself and tell people why you are or how you are.
Are you there?
Oh, sure. I'm here.
We may have lost
so
Dr.
this
Rima. I've got to keep my eyes on that.
Yeah, so I'm Joe Jesson, and basically I have a background about 30 years in electrical engineering and also Chief Technology Officer for a General Electric business unit. Although I looked at it as a telemetry, telematics, monitoring person, and built a business just around monitoring within General Electric. And also that we've had radiation monitoring, brainstorming meetings at Reuter-Stokes, one of the premier manufacturers of radiation sensors. But but this whole Fukushima business really throws a monkey wrench in a lot of what's been going on. And but yeah, my background is technical, and been building monitoring and sensing devices for almost 30 years now. And so I get a pretty good understanding of the dimension, invisible dimension called radiation.
Great. So you are a perfect person for.
Dr. Rima, are you there? We're losing you a little bit.
An invisible dimension. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, well, we should warn Joe. We should warn you that when the Dr. Rima Truth Reports touches on particularly sensitive subjects, we oftentimes find interference in our broadcast. So there may be some problems today, but
somebody else is doing.
We just lost her again, I think.
About radiation measurements. So Ralph now has a Geiger. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Dr. Rima.
Oh, good. So Ralph now has a Geiger counter, which he has been pointing at various sources. And the Geiger counter tells him that documentation is a little bit flimsy. We believe that we are measuring a combined.
No, we're losing you again, Dr. Rima. Let me fill that in. We believe we're measuring a combination of alpha, beta, gamma. The advertisement for the device indicates that.
Can you hear me?
Now you're back on again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Rima. I was just explaining.
Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Hear me?
She can't hear us. Let me type her a note. We can hear you.
I hear you.
Or we can hear you fine.
Okay, good. So, Ralph has been getting clicks per minute and
yes, those are clicks per minute you're probably hearing. Well, we lost Dr. Rima again. Joe, you and I need to keep on talking.
Yeah,
there's nothing like dead air space. You know, you can't have that on radio.
Hi.
There she
Can
goes.
you hear me?
Right. We're filling in when you lose you, but it's just constantly falling off.
So let's try again. So he's been getting micro sieverts, not millisieverts, which we decided to. He's been getting clicks per minute, and we decided to calculate what that meant in millisieverts per year, knowing, for example, the Japanese nuclear workers now have had their allowable annual dose raised to 50 millisieverts per year. And Japanese children have had their allowable annual dose raised to 20 millisieverts per year. So we would love your help in going through the calculations now so that we can show people how these numbers are reached. And by the way, if you're a nuclear worker and you reach your wildly inflated permissible level of 50 millisieverts per year, you can stop working for a year. If you're, I don't know what you live on, but you can stop working. But if you're a child living in Fukushima or Tokyo or wherever, and you've reached your annual limit, I'm not quite sure what the child is supposed to do. Stop breathing, stop eating, stop living for a year?
Well, here's the deal on that. You normally, first of all, if I was a radiation worker and I was sitting in Japan, I would not trust any gauges or any dosimeters that the government gave me, or the factory. I would independently have a dosimeter on one pocket rather than believe whatever anybody gives me. I mean, it's just...
Well, it's even more interesting than that. The subcontractor who has been given the job of decontaminating Fukushima, which of course I believe to be an impossible job, found that the workers were reaching their annual limit very, very quickly. And so the CEO of the company ordered lead boxes to be sent to Fukushima, which were ordered then to be cut up into shields. And the dosimeters are now encased in lead. And the numbers are
low enough to satisfy the government's requirements that people not get 50 millisieverts of exposure for years. So when you say you wouldn't trust them, you wouldn't trust the dosimeters, you can't trust anything that any government is saying about radiation at this point. And you surely can't trust TEPCO, the Japanese government, or the United States government. Didn't mean to interrupt you, Joe. Go ahead.
By the way,
No,
Joe,
no,
maybe we can make this more concrete. I have this dosimeter with me, this detector, and I changed I changed it to millisieverts, so it's giving me a reading, an average reading of 0.090 MUSV per hour. 0.090.
Right. So you're sitting, Ralph. You're sitting in by the Poconos, I think.
Yes. Yep. That's where we are. Yep.
Now there's an aquifer that's in eastern Pennsylvania and touches New Jersey, that is particularly radioactive, and in fact, I've seen tables where they attribute that to an increase in cancer. Okay. Which is an interesting table. I'm going to have to look that up somewhere, because there has been studies tying the radioactive aquifer and due to the granite and material that's in your subterranean area, that's tied directly to cancers in that area. So, but that tells me what is the background? What is the background before Fukushima? So whatever, if you have a reading of a background before Fukushima, you would be looking at the difference to see if there could be anything attributable to air or any kind of Fukushima. And
sadly, we do not. Sadly, we do not.
No, right. There's some stuff on the internet that gives us some hint about what background might have been, but all we have is the readings that we're taking now.
Right. So then you say, okay, these are the readings I'm taking now. How critical is that? And there's two schools of thought in the medical industry. One says, there's nothing to worry about below a certain dosage, and there's that's a zero effect. In other words, that you basically it's almost a linear function, that the number of cancers rise dramatically as the radiation background level of radiation rises. And the other school, as I said, is a nonlinear. So depending on what and I think the belief lately is tending towards, a certain degree of radiation will cause X amount of a probability of X amount of cancers. So what they're saying is that there's also new international standards on background level of radiation, and but to change that at the site, and just to say, and then to put the radiation, lead around the dosimeters is ridiculous. That's just, and as we talked about the other day, that just flies in the face of being an engineer. An engineer is probably the guy you want to go to get the truth on things. And it's just not going to lie, basically.
Well, certainly the truth on things that you can measure and that are linear and logical. What I'd like Ralph to do now is get out his calculator and multiply the
Dr. Rima, we're losing you.
It's not a dosimeter, it's a Geiger counter. There's a difference. And multiply that by the number of hours in a year. And that's really simply obtained. It's 365.25 times 60 minutes times 24 hours in a day.
And so that gives us 8760. 8760
millisieverts per hour that you're getting. And
now that's the question, Joe. Can you do that? I've now got the total number of hours in a year, which is 8,760. Do I just multiply that by 0.090?
Yeah, you could look at the total summation by doing that. And if you want to stay in those units, so you're going to go from Well, your Geiger counter itself does the conversion for you. So if you're looking at total cumulative dosage, you can multiply it, right?
Well, I was looking not at cumulative doses, but it was average. It says average.
That will be, if your radiation exposure is the same all year, this
Right.
will be your annual exposure.
Right.
Based on what you have right now.
And that number is 788.4 millisievert.
788.4 millisieverts per year. Radiation workers have had their permissible level raised to a wildly unwholesome 50. And so you are at 700 and what?
88, yeah.
788 millisieverts per year. Joe, as a measurement specialist, as an engineer, what's your response to the fact that Ralph is now sitting in a 780 something millisievert per year exposure location?
Well, what's interesting is that in Japan, they're telling people that the 788 is the upper end of millisieverts if you live in Japan and near the nuclear plants. So it's between 166 millisieverts and 788 millisieverts. So I'm sorry, Joe, I missed that. I had a little dropout. They're telling people in Japan that 788 millisieverts is the upper end of what? Well, these are people actually measuring it. It's measured between 166 and 788 millisieverts per year. That's for people living in Japan and near the reactor. So I would say if Ralph maintains this rate, he's on the upper end of Japan right now.
So it's like as though I were living in Fukushima. Get that, folks? The east coast of the United States is like living in Fukushima.
Well, again,
what is the West Coast like?
You're near a radiation source, a radioactive source, though, Ralph, and
right.
I can get you the details on that and publish that. But you're near, and in fact, that part of Pennsylvania also has radon problems.
Yeah, we had our house tested for radon, and we're okay on that. But my average is now down to 0.80 from 0.90. That's nice to know. So we'll see if the average changes over the show. You can all hear, I'm sure, the beeping going on in the background.
It's very important to note, and Joe will confirm this, that radiation levels fluctuate. It doesn't mean things are better.
Right.
It means that the air drift and the particular particles that you're being exposed to at that moment wax and wane. But the average right now, it's as if you and your family, and by the way, you have people of reproductive age living in your household.
Yep.
So I'm saying this with extreme emphasis. It's as if you and your family are living in Fukushima. Now, in Fukushima, 3 months ago, 66% of the children had diabetes. Why? Because the pancreas has rapidly dividing cells, which, like any rapidly dividing cells, are particularly susceptible to radiation. It's over a third of the children of Fukushima have nodules in their thyroid, which are either thyroid cancer or thyroid benign tumors. Those nodules are not being tested. You are living essentially in Radio Fukushima on the Jersey side of the world. And I would seriously suggest to you folks that wherever you live, there's nothing unique about Ralph's situation, except for the fact that he's got a Geiger counter provided by the foundation so that we could get exactly this data. Other than that, he's in the same situation you are, but maybe your situation is worse. So, Joe, I'd like your comment on that, and Ralph, I'd like your comment on that, not only from your head, but from your gut.
It's scary. That's what it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean, it's absolutely true that where Ralph lives, that eastern part of PA, I have friends that live in the same area that Ralph lived, and almost all of them, and Ralph sounds like he's the exception, that has very high rates of radon, which is a radiation source, obviously, in the basement, to the point where they've had to install fans to disperse that and to keep the.
Now, one of the things we did is we did the radon test before we bought the house, and hopefully it doesn't change over too many years. But we are on an area of slate. It's one of the last good aquifers left in New Jersey. The highlands here actually are protected now from too much development in order to protect the water. So that's all true, but the reality we face is that the northern hemisphere is getting more and more radioactive, and if that horrible disaster in Fukushima comes to its ultimate collapse, if those spent fuel pools, and they're not spent fuel pools, they were actually never intended for storage of spent fuel. They were intended as staging areas. These staging areas collapse, releasing all of those fuel rods, then we have a disaster at greater proportion. Joe, we found an article that we posted in one of our newsletters that suggests that the amount of radiation that's going to reach the west coast of the U.S. will be 10 times what's reaching Tokyo because of the prevailing winds. And so
because of the water flow.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is a situation that doesn't get better, and people have to begin to understand that. That's one of the reasons we formed something called the Women's Health Freedom Coalition, the first project of which is Mothers Against Radiation, MAR. And what is it about? It's about getting groups of people around the country to do what we're doing right here at home, to get a group of people together to buy a radiation detector and to start making a record of what's going on. I'm going to be getting the software that goes with this device that allows me to download it into a computer. We are going to eventually set up our own map on the internet where people in the coalition can post their readings. We need to start getting not just more readings, but readings that are in the same, that are the same way, so we can start comparing them. And we know that the authorities are not doing this, and it's up to individuals to join together with their neighbors and begin to get this data. We need the data in order to make it clear to decision makers that they can't continue to cover up and pretend this is not happening.
Joe, tell us about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying I commend you, because anything that sheds light on things that governments like to sweep under the rug is what we need to do as citizens.
Right.
Let's talk about the possibilities on a technical basis that we've been talking about with you and your experience in doing exactly this kind of citizen measurement activity.
Yeah. So when Fukushima happened, basically an ad hoc group of engineers said, wait a minute, we don't trust the government. We're going to see for ourselves. We're going to build a sensor, and then we're going to put it together and see on a collective site what everybody's measuring. So there's this citizen movement underway to do that, and so
Good.
People are aware of what's going on in Japan. And
what is the site? What is the site, Joe?
It's, hang on, let me get you this.
Oh, please, yeah, and we'll post it on the chat as well. Now, we've been in touch with some of those people in Japan who are on the front lines of what's going on. Professor Murata, for example, the former Japanese ambassador to Switzerland, who has come out very publicly, and we've been back and forth with him. He's a very fine individual, and he wrote us a very kind letter telling us that General Bert's Fukushima estimate of situation was exactly correct and was something that the world needed to see. In addition to that, we've been in touch with some of the activists there through Professor Murata, and we set up an action item, folks. If you can go to our action item page, which I'll post on the portal, you'll find an action item where we send a message to not just our own decision makers in the U.S., but to the Japanese embassy, telling them that we want them to start treating this situation as serious. And that's, of course, that tiny URL. So I'm going to put it in here. tinyurl. Pushback here.
They are currently treating the situation as serious. They're treating it as a serious embarrassment to the good name and reputation of the country, and so they are seriously burying the information shortly before they bury their citizens, and we bury ours.
It's already happening, isn't it, Dr. Rima? Isn't there at least 20,000 excess deaths so far? But that was as of March.
In the first 9 months of the Fukushima disaster. That was from March 11th to the end of December in the United States. The U.S. government statistics acknowledged that there were 20,000 excess deaths that had no known cause, and that was primarily...
There you go, Dr. Rima. You're saying something really important because it's just disappeared.
The more vulnerable it is to radiation. Joe, do we have that that link for the site? Because we'd love to give it out.
Yeah, I'll just tell you, it's a short one, so it's not
I'm
bad.
typing it out.
HTTPS :
Yep.
COSM, COSM.com/feeds/30634 is example of one of the feeds.
All right. I got that, and I'm putting it on the chat, and I've also posted it on the live broadcast.
COSM/feeds.
Yeah, it's HTTPS : //COSM, COSM.com, feeds/feeds, FEEDS/30634.
Okay, that's posted in both places now, so those folks who are seeing it on the archive will see it.
This is one engineer who lives, has built his handmade Geiger counter using a Chinese Geiger-Müller tube.
Excellent.
And he's put this out as window or indoor, in the window, but indoor.
And it just broadcasts whatever is showing on that device. I like that.
Exactly. So he's sampling, he's broadcasting whatever he's reading on a 10-minute average, and he's sending it. And so it says currently 103.6 nanosieverts per hour.
A nanosievert is 1,000th of a millisievert?
Exactly. So nano is 10 to the minus 9th.
So instead of my 0, so right now I've got 0.080 millisieverts, and that would be 0.0080 or 0.00080, I guess, nanosievert.
Yeah, you move it over 3 places to the left.
Okay.
Are you hearing this, folks? Are you hearing that in New Jersey, Ralph is experiencing orders of magnitude more radiation than they are in Tokyo, which Arnie Gunderson says under American OSHA standards would be considered a radioactive, the soil in Tokyo would be considered a radiohazard, a biohazard area. And Ralph is in a more radioactive area, some of which has to be attributed to the granite, the natural formations. But 800 and some, or yesterday it was 800 and some, today 700 and some millisieverts per year when a radiation worker in Tokyo, in Japan at Fukushima has had their allowable dosage up to 50 millisieverts per year. That's 15 times what a Japanese radiation worker is allowed to be exposed to in a year. I do not believe that that is possible as a background radiation level. I believe that Ralph is measuring a substantial increase from the Fukushima Daiichi disaster. And I'd like to get Joe's response to that.
Joe, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You're
I'm
thinking.
here.
I got it. Thinking's good.
What I'm trying to do is
We all must think. Let me tell you, this is a time when careful thought and careful
What did Joe
consideration.
say?
Good.
No, well, I think you're going to discover new things. I mean, I think Ralph lives in a
New and
particularly
scary
hot area
things.
right now,
Yeah.
and I think when you start measuring, I think you'll be surprised at your own background radiation.
Dr. Rima, do you have a
But
Geiger
we
counter
have to
there? Do
realize
you have a
that
Geiger counter?
background-
Yeah. Do you have a Geiger counter with you? You can turn on and we can see what the background is in Santiago while we're seeing what the background is in New Jersey. Are you there, Dr. Rima?
Are you asking me?
Hi.
I have all my computers tied up right now.
Yeah. No, I'm asking Dr. Rima if she has one of her Geiger counters handy. It might be interesting to compare.
But I'm in Santiago de Chile.
Right.
And here the readings have been as high, most of them were around 4 millisieverts per year.
Oh.
And actually we got up to 7 millisieverts.
Wow, compared to 788 right now, that is extraordinarily significant when you start to think about what's happening here in the Northern Hemisphere.
You're at 700 times what I measured on the top of a mountain, a significantly more radioactive place than the sea level areas. Here in low radiation Chile. Now, General Stubblebine and I and Ralph have been talking about low radiation migration. We didn't make this up. We didn't pull it out of our orifices, folks. We're telling you the truth. We're telling, as we always do, we're telling you that the radiation levels, and there is no safe level of radiation. Let me point out that the word background makes it sound as if it's somehow okay, and it's not. There is no safe level of radiation, and we need to measure the radiation levels the way they're doing in Japan at COSM.com feeds COSM.com/feeds/30634. That's COSM.com. We need a network of exactly this kind of radiation information. And I believe Joe has the interest and the capacity to build us these radiation counters. One of the options we're talking about is smartphone detectors that then feed the information into a site like this. And I'd like to know from the people on the chat whether they think that would be a worthwhile project and whether they would be interested in participating in that. And while you're sending your information over the chat at healthfreedomportal.org, I'd like Joe to tell us what would be involved, how difficult it would be to create this mesh network.
Right. Well, the nice thing about smartphones, it gives you the platform to start adding sensors. And we talked about radiation as one sensor, but you have several small entrepreneurs that are working furiously and launching products that plug into the Android and the iPhone that gives you a radiation monitoring. Some are just gamma, some are alpha, beta, gamma, but we're starting to see some products appear. So what I'm proposing is that we can put together our own portal, so we could have some control of the data and some of the calibration and also the quality of the data, and put together our own network, our own citizens network, where we can build, see it on maps, basically directly appear. And if we get enough of these out there, you can actually detect the plume, the pattern
Wow.
of radiation increases, and come as you see radiation as a 3D as opposed to just Ralph and reporting his point source. but it's the smartphones are very inexpensive now, and and I've even used Android platforms without even a SIM card. They work fine on Wi-Fi, and you can use it as a dedicated sensor platform, and only pay for a used Android and not monthly service, which is very cool.
Oh, very good thought. All right.
Yeah,
we've set up
like
we've
that.
set up a website, folks, on our webpage, specifically about these issues. It is the General Bert multisensor page, and I've just posted that on both the chat and on the live feed. Let me see if I can get that live feed easier to see. Yeah, that should be good. And the phrase multisensor is here because among the things we've been talking to Joe about over the past couple of months, and an idea that General Bert put into our noggins was that the handheld device should be able to test for a bunch of things. We should be able to learn a lot about our environment and ourselves. And that's why we've come up with the idea of the General Bert multisensor. So it might tell you not just the counts per minute radiation detection that's going on. It might also tell you the outside temperature. It might tell you from your hand holding on to it what your heart rate is. It might tell you a bunch of things. A bunch of not just biofeedback from your body, but, if you will, biofeedback from the planet around you. And so we're really beginning to explore this. And one of the things the Fund for Natural Solutions needs to raise money for is to be able to pay for this. And so we announce our intentionality. That's what Bert told me to do. He said, we have to make our intention clear, and our intention in this case is to create something that will be really useful for people.
So what do we want?
Good.
Oh, by the way, one of our listeners is confused about whether we're talking about microsieverts or whether we're talking about millisieverts. A microsievert is a millionth of a sievert. A millisievert is 1,000th of a sievert.
Right.
Is your Geiger counter, Ralph, reading U, capital S, small v,
Yes.
or M?
No, it's mu SV that it's reading.
Okay, so you are talking about microsieverts, not
Right.
millisieverts. Now you have to do last night I thought we had put the meter on millisieverts. So we're not talking about 700 and some millisieverts. We're talking about 700 and some microsieverts. So now we have to divide and calculate correctly.
Right. And that gives us about 78 or 80 a year, which is still, by the way, above what a radiation plant worker can allegedly safely get. So we're still talking about twice what would get a radiation worker a year's vacation.
And I want to thank Professor Piera for hearing that distinction and calling it to our attention.
Oh, Tony is a great person and been a guest with us.
Also engineer.
And so, thank you, Tony, for being on with us.
Very important.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about what we need from the people who are listening and from the supporters of Health Freedom, the Natural Solutions Foundation community, to make this a reality. What's the simplest, cheapest, most effective way to do this, Joe?
Well, I think the lowest cost way we do it is we need to find a low cost sensor that plugs into a common smartphone, and I need to check, verify that the calibration's good, repeatability is good, and then just start repackaging it, and then have have it become a product or a service that we could offer.
Absolutely. This is something we want to do.
Yeah. And by the way, like we were just talking, I checked on the status. The EPA has their own radiation network. I don't know if you knew that.
Is it still being broadcast? We'd heard rumors that it was down.
Well, That's exactly right. It says, listen to this: the EPA has acknowledged that its network isn't fully operational, and according to media reports referenced by Hirsch, some of RadNet's monitoring systems have gone months without receiving necessary repairs. Oh, I'm so shocked.
Oh, there's no priority, you know. Hey,
And yet, at the same time, they're saying is they are seeing a increase in radiation from Fukushima. Nice, right? You think that would be a priority?
You don't think there's a cover-up or anything?
Nah.
Nah.
It went on to say the EPA said Monday that it identified trace amounts of radioactive isotopes consistent with the Japanese nuclear incident in 12 of its RadNet air monitoring systems. But that's when it's only, Dr. Rima, that's when it's working, though.
How many do they? Is that 100% of their monitoring units? It probably is.
That's just the work.
Well, folks, this is one case in which we're going to have to do it ourselves. The president tells us that nobody does it themselves. We all depend on the largest of the federal authorities for our very existence. But here's another example where if we don't do it ourselves, it ain't going to get done, and the cover-up will continue.
And that's the point that I wanted to make. We can set this system up, but it means nothing and accomplishes nothing unless the health freedom community takes it upon itself individually, person by person, to actually do the measurements and post the measurements on the site that we set up. We'll make it as easy as possible, but we have to take the responsibility for this information flow ourselves, and we'll help you do that. But we see this, unlike the EPA, unlike the Japanese government, unlike the Canadian environmental people, we see this as a massive priority. So much of a priority that General Bert and I have 5 times now, this is our 5th visit, come to Chile to put all of the many pieces involved in a food supply together to bring you food from the low radiation deep south. That's why we're doing this. Now, if you think that putting a food supply together is an easy task, oh my, you should come down here and try it with us. And by the way, at least 2 people are coming to visit us and to spend time and see what we do and get involved with us on a boots on the ground basis. And you're invited to do that too. We think we have found a way to not only bring you things in glass jars like olive oil and vinegar, and in plastic like quinoa that can be protected from the environmental contamination, but we believe that we may have come up with a solution that will actually bring you fresh fruits and vegetables from the low radiation south. We are in the process of sourcing flour, wheat flour. Not easy because the entire wheat growing industry was driven out of business by the cheap, low-quality wheat that came in from the United States, was dumped on the market, undercut the prices of the farmers, and drove the wheat-growing farmers out of business. In fact, one of our close associates here in Chile used to be a wheat farmer. He grew wheat and corn straw for brooms, and he was driven out of business by the cheap wheat that was dumped on the market here in South America from the United States, and by the cheap corn straw and brooms that were dumped on the market here in South America by China. So he knows about globalism. He's a wonderful guy, by the way, marvelous.
Is this the Dr. Rima? Is this the person who you did the interview with?
Yes.
Oh, let me put that. Let me post. I'm going to post the link. There's a new web page we've set up on Weebly so you can have access to Dr. Rima's video blogs. There are now 5 video blogs that are posted. Most of them are also available on the YouTube channel, but this is now a special page, and we're going to be posting a link to it on our main page, and I'm going to give you the link as soon as I'm able to get it right here.
In fact, last week Marcial was our guest. Maybe you can post the archive. Oh, speaking of archives, I did a show for Live Truth with Brian Lang on the 25th of this month, and it is now, according to an email that I received today, the second most listened to archive show that they've ever had, and that's in 3 days. So he thinks that it'll soon be the first most archived show. People are hungry for the truth. You tell them the truth, and they may get shocked, they may get upset, but they also get enlivened and activated. Do you agree with that, Joe?
Are you with us, Joe?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, there's no question. The truth is very important to any scientist and engineer lives and breathes by the truth. If they can't believe the data, it's useless.
Exactly. And
harmful.
In fact, no, yeah, exactly. It's harmful. What we know is that you can't believe the pharmaceutical data. The pharmaceutical data, the vaccine data, is all useless. It's all harmful lies, like Merck saying that the measles vaccine was 95% effective, and in order to get that number of antibody counts to make that claim, they added dog blood with antibodies to their test vials for years and knowingly presented fraudulent documentation. The same thing is true with the pertussis vaccine. It doesn't work. Most of the pertussis cases are in vaccinated people. In some of the outbreaks now, it's 100% of the vaccination of the pertussis or whooping cough cases are in vaccinated people. For instance, in New Zealand, every single case of pertussis is in a fully vaccinated person, and yet their solution is to insist that more vaccination is necessary. Well, it is if you're looking for the aftermarket. More and more and more, the gods of truth that we have respected, the medical journals, the governments, the universities, turn out to be deceitful and unworthy of trust. You have to trust independent scientists. And just as you take an average of the radiation counts, you have to take an average of the independent scientists' results. And you have to make sure that they're truly independent. What would you say to that, Ralph? What would you say to that, Joe?
No truth without accurate data. No truth where people's financial interests are at stake. So you got to have both good data and good judges, if you will. And there's no question about that.
No, you're exactly right. It's hard to believe anything coming out of this government, let alone other governments, and I don't know. It's just, you just can't believe anything. You got to have your own surveillance. You got to be watching the watchers. That's for sure.
Exactly. And one of the ways to do that in this very, very, very critical issue of radiation is to have your own counting system that you can quite literally count upon. Now, there is a site up on the internet run by people who want you to have that information. It's called radiationnetwork.com, and we watch it. We make sure that we know what's happening on it. But I have to tell you that there's a problem there. And the problem there is that different Geiger counters have different scales. They could be in milli this or micro that or nano the other.
and they measure different things. They can measure different kinds of particle decay, alpha, beta, gamma, all three of them, one of them, two of them, who knows? And calibration may or may not be taking place. So the numbers on radiationnetwork.com are interesting, and the general upward drift is very, very troublesome. But we don't know exactly what it means. You're a measurement specialist, Joe. What do you think about that?
It's a problem because in measurement science, everything goes back to references. So you have standards. In communication, you have standards. In pharmaceuticals, you have standards, and you have to go back to, what is your reference point, and what are the units, and how well is it reproducible, and when was the last time it's calibrated. Every bit of instrumentation I have requires a frequency of calibration every 6 months to a year, for example. Otherwise, you just can't believe the data either.
One of the things we really need to do in the development of the General Bert multisensor is to keep the device simple. We don't
Right.
the people who are getting these counts don't need to know whether it's alpha, beta, or gamma. They need to know the counts per minute, and they need to know the average in a single unit, whether it's millisieverts or whatever it's going to be, so that all the data is, we're comparing oranges to oranges. I think that simplicity is important. The multiple uses becomes important because that makes people keep this device with them more often because they're using it for multiple reasons, getting biofeedback from themselves and from their environment. I think the device, if done correctly, could be very powerful. It could be
Right.
really, and this is good that we're having an opportunity to discuss this on a more philosophical level, if you will, here on the program, because we can begin to get our ideas straight on what we can do, and we need feedback from the people listening to find out what's going to fly in the marketplace of ideas. And that's what we need. So
The marketplace of that. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, this is, and we've talked about this before. I think it could be the foundation of other type of surveillance, such as carcinogens and biological threats. It could be the common platform for this as sensors get developed and tested.
Right. I like that. I like it. And the idea of using iPads and iPhones and that sort of thing is very good. And your concept of using the iPhones that are a little bit old and only just buying them cheap and using them whenever you're near a Wi-Fi. We are all near Wi-Fi's very often these days. That's good. That's good. All right, now.
It's very good. What else? What other kinds of sensors would you like to see incorporated into this system that we're talking about developing, Joe? And remember, people, this is a discussion of what we might do, not of what we have done.
Well, I think I'd like to know some basics, temperature. I'd like to be able to sense oxygen saturation, O2 level. That's a good indicator. Blood pressure is always nice, and heart rate. But that would be in my top 3 or 4 list.
All right, let's see what people are saying here. Dr. Tony says ozone air purifiers. No, hey, that'd be interesting. Testing ozone levels in the air. I mean, there are a lot of things. Pollens and viruses use ozone. Oh no, he's talking about something else there. Okay, Dr. Tony.
By the way, I'm looking at the radiationnetwork.com map of Japan, okay? Because you can look at their U.S. map, which has a lot of sensors plugged in, or you can look at their Japan or their South American or Australia map.
There we go.
So let's go to radiationnetwork.com map of Japan.
All right, I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring that up. That's right here. Let's see what it does.
They have 2 sensors.
Two
one of
sensors.
3 sensors actually. No, I'm sorry.
Two.
Yes, 3 sensors. One of which is in Sapporo, to the north of Japan, and it has a level. And we don't know what it's measuring or what the calibration is, but it has a number of 13. Now you'd say, well, 13 is not very serious. And then down further south, there is well south of Fukushima, there is another sensor, and its number is 12. So in radioactive Japan, and we know that Japan is seriously radioactive, the number is either 10 or 12, depending on whether you're looking at the Fukushima Daiichi inset or not, which tells us that these numbers don't tell us anything.
Oh, here's it. Okay.
Sorry about that. It would be really nice if it did tell us something, but we know that the soil in Tokyo exceeds OSHA standards for nuclear hazard material, and yet the number here is a comforting 12. So when we look at something like radiation network, what we have to say is that's very interesting, but we have absolutely no idea what it means. That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. We have to have data that we can rely upon, that we can point to, and that won't just get shot down on technical grounds so that governments and health agencies and so on, and by the way, insurance companies can just brush aside. So this is a level of rigor which is not sufficient for what we need to do. Thoughts and comments, and Ralph, I'd like your comment on the legal validity of data like this and what it might lead to in terms of people being able to receive compensation for treatment and diseases and so on.
Oh, absolutely. This is the cover-up, of course, makes it highly unlikely that anyone will ever get redress for the injuries that they are and we are all suffering as a result of what happened in Fukushima. The other thing that obviously is from this map is that there's very little monitoring going on that the public can get access to in Japan itself. And of course, these numbers are so low compared to what we saw on the U.S. map, which we can go back to. Let's see, where the numbers range from 17 to 40 to 56. It's fairly large numbers. I'm wondering if those numbers in Japan shouldn't be multiplied by 10 or by 100 to get to the same scale that these numbers in the U.S. represent. I'm wondering if it's the same scale at all. What do you think,
Right.
Joe?
Exactly. What's your thought, Joe?
Yeah, it's hard to tell not knowing, who's in control of the equipment and how it's being handled.
Exactly.
And where they bought the sensors from, and there's so many factors that go into a reliable detection network, and I think that you got to have some confidence, like you said, you got to have some confidence in your system. So you might want to have spot checks or a calibration. Is small, tiny discs that go out for calibration for with a common radiation source that's held at a certain distance, and
Well, that's a good idea. Yeah.
And we could circulate those just so everybody's on the same level, on the same reference point.
Folks, we can do this, but we can't do it without funding to do it. And we're going to get, we get a lot of volunteer help, and Joe has given us tremendous input. But without the resources to make it happen, it's not going to get designed. It is literally a peripheral, a device that would have to be plugged into an iPhone or an iPad, because the sensors themselves are not built into those devices. So, but it's possible to do it. It is possible.
Exactly. what did we have a phone call set up with the with your friend, the PhD physicist?
I can get him next week, Dr. Rima. He's
Next week. Okay.
Yeah, so he's more than happy to come on the show, and he's a card-carrying nuclear physicist, and his specialty is he's working on a book on the Fukushima, and he basically thinks some of the concerns are underblown. So he's basically very concerned too, for a lot of other reasons too. Like there's a great deal of liquid ready to go into the ocean when the next storm hits. So there's a lot of concerns he has, and he thought they've missed the incident of bone cancer too, attributable to this.
Oh.
Absolutely. I've just done
He's a
some
good
calculations.
guy.
Pardon me?
Yeah, so Sid is available, I believe, next weekend.
That's good. I think what we should do is we should continue. This conversation should become a regular part almost of what we're doing on the Dr. Rima Truth Reports. We should use these Sunday sessions with people to plan how we're going to respond to what's going on around us, with the assumption that the authorities are not going to protect us or tell us the truth.
By the way, I've just done some calculations, and on the COSM.com/feeds/30634 site, what I've found is that the millisieverts, that's thousandths of a sievert per hour level in Tokyo, is 43, and your millisievert level is double that, Ralph.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So we're talking about some serious stuff here. I would assume that anybody who has a Geiger counter in North America at this point would find similarly distressing realities. If you're on the West Coast and you have a Geiger counter which is reasonably calibrated, please let us know what your readings are. We'll be doing this in a much more elaborate way, as you hear from our discussion with Joe.
Joe, I'm looking at the COSM site right now, and I've got it on the live feed, and it has a number on it. It has 109.825.23253.
No,
what is it?
That's so what I did was I went down to measurement number 5, which is
okay. We're going down to
99.4 nanosieverts per hour,
right.
And I multiplied that by the number of hours in a year, and I divided it by 100,000 to correct for the fact that this is nanosieverts, and we want to talk in millisieverts.
And what did you get?
And that's the number that I got.
Which was? Repeat the number again.
Which was 43 and change. I can get the
43.
exact
All right.
number.
Okay.
Hold on. The exact number was. Oh no, my calculator cleared. It's a.
That's okay. That's quite sufficient close. So that gives us again right around the amount that is allegedly the new safe level for radiation plant workers.
For a year.
For a
but
year.
I want you to know
insane.
that I did not take the higher number, 109.
Right.
I took the lower number because
that's the 1 hour average. Yeah, well, the 10-minute average is going to bounce up and down. Sure.
Well, this is actually a 1 hour average.
This is the 1 hour average, right.
I used. So, what can you do, folks? Well, one of the things you can do is, perversely enough, not use a water filter. And if you can avoid it, don't use an air conditioning filter. Why? Because you're collecting radioactive particles. I know it's summer.
Yeah, but Dr. Rima, those particles would get into your lungs anyway. Are you saying seal your house? Are you saying seal your house?
What happens when you go over to your sink, Joe, and you have a water filter that's collecting these particles? You go over to your sink a whole lot of times a day. what happens when you do that? I would like to hear from you what the exposure level might be.
Sure. Wherever there's a filtration or collection point, there it definitely is higher levels of radiation. And there's daughter products that break down and which are also radioactive.
Yes.
So one of the things people do, even a television screen, because you have a static charge on that, it collects dust. You find the television screen dust to be more radioactive than background. So wherever there's a filter or a collection point, you will see higher levels.
Joe, are you okay there? Hello, Joe.
Oh yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, you're okay.
Yeah, so the filter becomes a collection point, and it seems to concentrate radiation, and then daughter products get created, which are also radioactive.
So you're saying it's better to let them waft through your house than concentrate them?
Absolutely. I mean, the idea of radon, again, is disperse it, get rid of it, get fans on it, get it out of the basement, where it's concentrated in the basement. And that's a common problem in your neck of the woods, Ralph.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, we had that tested, but with all the fracking going on, one wonders if more radon might not be released.
Yeah, I would monitor it over time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't assume it's a static. It does change, and this radiation from Fukushima is additive, and it has been detected last year even in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, my thought was when I saw the difference in radiation counts between just the house in general and putting it up by the filter was, well, that's good. It's getting those particles away from where it might get into my lungs. But what you're saying is it's actually drawing in air from the outside, which is not really true. The house is pretty sealed. It's just recirculating air inside the house.
Right.
So it is pulling the radiation out of the air in the house. And it's concentrating it in a spot where, people do pass through, but they're not standing there. So it still seems to me better to filter it out than not filter it out. Even though I realize that I now have somewhat more radioactive filter. The difference was between about 30 counts per minute and about 50 counts per minute. So it wasn't quite twice as much.
Well, but as Dr. Remus stated,
Yeah.
if you're close by the filter point, you really don't want that either.
Yeah, I understand that. And, then we got.
Then what do you do
the
to
filter?
dispose of the filter?
I would deliver it to the EPA and say, this is a radioactive filter. What do you want to do with it? Leave it on their doorstep. I think people should start leaving their filters, their radioactive air filters and water filters, on the town hall's front steps or the local EPA office.
That is a brilliant idea, Ralph. Out of that comment has come a social action. We need people to collect their spent water filters,
Right.
and we need them to deliver them to the EPA.
Well, actually, let's go one step further, Dr. Rima. We should certainly test those water filters for radioactivity because they become a way of finding out what's going on. It concentrated.
No, we shouldn't.
No?
Because then we are knowingly sending radioactive material
She's
through
good.
the mail or through FedEx.
All
So instead of testing them, we have to not test them so we can legitimately say, I didn't know it was radioactive, and just mail it to the EPA, put it on their doorstep and say, is this radioactive?
Right.
I think I'm too chicken to do that one.
Yeah. By the way, Joe, what was your website so I can let people know what your website is? If you choose. Whichever one you'd like to share with people. We always have offer our guests the opportunity to share a website.
Oh, well, the wireless, currently I'm CTO for a company in New York, and it's www.exacttechnology.com. And we build small OEM open wireless monitoring devices.
All right.
It's open source, open hardware. Put whatever sensors you want on it. You want an anthrax sensor, alcohol. We have customers with alcohol sensors on them right now. And my prototype is around that board with a radiation sensor, Geiger-Müller.
All right, very interesting. I'm going to give people this site so they can take a look at it. Thank you. All right.
Professor Piera has corrected my math, and he says that the Tokyo reading of 100 nanosieverts per hour is 0.88 millisieverts, or thousandths of a sievert per year. So the Tokyo levels, according to this COSM site, are 0.88 millisieverts per year. That's an important correction. Being dyslexic, I asked him to do the calculations for me, and he kindly did.
Good. We want to make. We need to get our science as correct as we can, and I'm sure we will.
My experience with math is I always understand the concepts really, really well. I just always get the numbers wrong because I'm really, really dyslexic. But thank God that I'm old enough so that there was no such diagnosis of learning disability or dyslexia. And again, thank God there were no psychoactive medications for people like me who invert numbers, who get plus and minus confused in our heads and use the wrong one, because I was never medicated. So my brain still continues to operate on its own terms instead of being poisoned systematically by a society gone mad.
Wow. All right. Well, I think we just have a report, by the way, that there's been an earthquake in Japan, and so I'm pulling out eQuake 3D and I'm putting it on the screen. I don't know how much of it you can see, folks.
And what is the magnitude?
That's what I'm about to find out. That's what I'm trying to find out.
And is it near Fukushima?
That's what I'm trying to find out. I'm spinning the Earth right now.
Well, that's the last thing we need right now.
5.7, but no, it looks like it's above. No, the one near Fukushima is a 4.6.
Great.
All right.
Let me point out that the estimates of what will bring fuel pool number 2 and fuel pool number 4, and 4 is cracked and bulging, what will bring that down range from 5.0 to 7.2 on the Richter scale. But even a 4.6 quake will weaken the already weakened structure of the fuel pool at reactor number 4. And as people who have accessed General Bert's Fukushima failure webinar, which is most instructive, and I urge you to do so, Ralph, maybe you can. Oh, the website.
I'll put it on. Sure, I'll put it on. By the way, Dr. Rima, there were 3 earthquakes within 100 miles of where you're sitting right now, maybe 150 miles, over the past 5 days in the 4.45 and 6 range. So the whole Pacific Ring is active, but when you look at it, Japan is quite active.
Most active. Yes, I'm in Santiago de Chile. We have earthquakes here all the time.
Wow, 6.7 in the Indian Ocean.
Like seismically active places in the world, the construction here is designed to withstand serious earthquakes. Chile has no nuclear reactors. No, that's not quite true. Chile has 2 small experimental nuclear reactors. 10 days after the Fukushima disaster, the United States government, in the form of President Obama and the President of Chile, signed an accord to develop 2 nuclear power stations. One of the things that I'm hoping here is that the very active political sense of the people will prevent that from happening, because obviously any nuclear reactor is a disaster waiting to happen. Uruguay, now people have been asking, what about Uruguay? Uruguay is, contrary to popular belief, a GMO country. Uruguay permits Monsanto's MON 810 corn. Uruguay has essentially no regulations on spraying. The rumor is out that Uruguay is a completely organic country. That's absolute balderdash. And it's also, according to an eyewitness whom I trust, a very heavily chemtrailed country. So if you're looking for low radiation migration options, I would say, despite the fact that Uruguay has an easy permanent residency status available to people, I wouldn't go there based on the facts that I've just given you. Low radiation is good. Any radiation is toxic. The United States government has officially begun, or semi-officially, but effectively begun to embrace the concept of hormesis. Hormesis means that the dose makes the poison. It's an old concept that is found in traditional medical practices in Europe and elsewhere, that a little bit of something that would harm you in a big dose is helpful to you in a little dose. And homeopathy, in fact, is a form of energetic hormesis. We give you the energy of the bad stuff in a teeny, teeny, tiny, weeny, itty bitty dose, and then you get better because your body responds in a way that protects against what would happen from the bad stuff at a big dose. And homeopathy works, as a matter of fact. So energetic hormesis is dandy. But the United States government has begun putting out papers saying, you know, if you have the right amount of radiation, it's actually protective against cancer. You know, it's actually good for you to have radiation around in amounts far in excess of ordinary pre-nuclear testing background. It's okay. Not only is there no harm to human health, it's dandy. And of course, this is the same kind of balderdash as, hey, let's add a 5 vaccine shot to the baby's vaccine schedule. Let's give them 5 at 1 jab. Why don't we do that? And we'll put aluminum and mercury and squalene and let's see, what else can we think of? Polysorbate 80, that's good, that causes infertility. We'll put monosodium glutamate, that's good for diabetes, it causes it, and that's real profitable. What else can we put in there? Oh, I know. How about some dog DNA? That's good. How about some simian virus 40? That causes leukemia, and that's great business. You know, lots and lots of good things. It's kind of like hormesis, a little bit of, oh, let's say some mucus, because we found human mucus in vaccines. That's probably good for you too.
It just gets crazier by the day, Dr. Rima, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Right.
you know what comes out of the rear end of a bull?
Yes. Political posturing.
Scientific balderdash.
That's right. Well, Dr. Rima, amazingly as it seems, we've gone through an hour and a half of the Dr. Rima Truth Reports on www.healthfreedomportal.org. Dr. Rima, it's time for an advertisement. And I invite you to talk to us about one of our favorite subjects, Valley of the Moon, all natural, all healthful coffee. And I'll find one of our Valley of the Moon images to put up while you're telling the folks what's going on at the farm.
Well, we have a coffee farm, and it has been identified by the organic farming expert who is employed by the Panamanian government. His name is Giovanni Astia. It has been identified as the only truly organic farm in Panama.
Wow.
That means that the coffee that you get from us at valleyofthemooncoffee.org, that coffee comes to you with what nature or God or Gaia or whomever you hold responsible for these things intended to be in coffee. It's shade grown. It's absolutely impeccably cared for and tended. It's lovingly pruned, and it's grown on our own 25-acre or 10 hectare, it's a 50-acre, 50-acre farm. Now, 10 of those hectare, half of the farm, is fallow. Land needs to rest. And we have just recently increased our coffee area by 3/4 of a hectare, or about 2 acres. We propagated our own plants over 2 years from our own coffee seeds, our own beans, and we took them from our own nursery and planted them lovingly by hand and fertilized them with the compost that we make from the unused parts of the coffee plant and bean, the cherry, the high antioxidant skins, and so on. And that wonderful material returns to the soil the nutrients that the coffee trees extract. Coffee trees are very hard on the soil. If you want a truly organic farm, you have to return nutrients to the soil so that the plants are healthy and have a good immune system. That's how we avoid spraying for fungal and insect diseases that the other coffee farmers who don't use our methods have to use toxic chemicals to cope with and fail very often. Not only that, coffee is delicious, absolutely delicious. Every professional coffee taster who has tasted it, and there are 7 now, every single one has said, even though we're not paying them anything, that this coffee is the best coffee they've ever tasted. Well, of course it is. It's the cleanest and healthiest coffee that you've ever tasted, and therefore it tastes exactly the way beautifully roasted coffee is supposed to taste. It's wonderful stuff, and we're very proud of it, but there's another reason that we want you to use it. Information is coming out that's showing, if you can trust anything in the scientific journals, the medical journals, information is coming out that because of its high antioxidant levels, coffee is cancer protective. Coffee used in high amounts, and that's 6 cups of coffee a day, reduces the overall death rate by 13% from all causes. Coffee reduces degenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease. Why? Well, because of the antioxidants. In fact, even though it's contaminated, most of the coffee that people drink is contaminated, still, most Americans get more than half of their daily antioxidants from coffee. They go to Starbucks and they're drinking their latte or their macchiato or their cappuccino or whatever, and they're getting antioxidants at the same time. Well, our Valley of the Moon coffee doesn't have any negative chemicals, any bad things in it. It only has the compounds that the coffee plant produces, and we know how good those are for us. I suggest that you help your health and you help health freedom by making your coffee Valley of the Moon coffee. You can go to valleyofthemooncoffee.org. We are so proud of our new crop. And what we've heard, this is exciting, Ralph doesn't know this yet. What we've heard from our coffee manager is, and I have to give you a little background. The first year, we had X number of pounds of roasted coffee. The second year of our farm's life, we had 2X number of pounds. The third year, we had 4X number of pounds. This year, we have 8X number of pounds.
This
now,
is a geometric progression.
We can't keep expecting a geometric progression, but next year, our coffee manager, Ishmael, who lives on the coffee finca, our coffee manager tells us that we will have an increase of about 30 to 40% more coffee than we have now because the
Wow.
crop is so abundant and so healthy. This is interesting because all around us there are bugs called broca, which are eating the insides of the coffee bean out. Because our coffee is so strong, its immune system is so good, and because we are so meticulous in maintaining the grounds, we have no broca. It's magnificent coffee, and it's Health Freedom's own coffee. Why don't you make it your Christmas gift this year? Why don't you make it your birthday gift? Why don't you make it your gift to yourself? It helps you, it helps the recipient, it's delicious, and it helps the Natural Solutions Foundation.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rima, for that wonderful, wonderful commercial. And it is, you know, we give you a gift of wonderful coffee, and we're really happy that we can help fund the foundation in this way. And here's an image of one of the Nobly Bougle girls who picks the coffee. And
we do not permit the children
right.
to pick coffee during school hours. They have
exactly.
to be in school. We pay a top dollar price to the pickers. The picking is interesting. You have to have little bitty fingers or use your fingers very carefully because coffee grows on a branch and the beans are very close to each other and they ripen at different times. So you'll have a totally green bean next to a completely ripe red one. If you touch the green bean while you're picking the red one, then the green bean will fall off the branch and be lost. So coffee pickers develop enormous skill with their fingers so that they can pick and touch just exactly what they want. Otherwise, the crop is destroyed and they don't make any money because they get paid by the pound. Actually, they get paid by the can of coffee. A can has about 30 pounds in it, or 33 pounds, and the can is weighed and then they are paid. We pay them by the can without weighing it because they make more money when we don't stop and weigh the can. They can pick more and they need the money. So we trust that they're not putting rocks in the can, and indeed they're not. So coffee is a very, very complicated thing to grow, to maintain, to produce. We're doing it because we're teaching other farmers. We think it's a very important thing to do. And oh, by the way, the health benefits are enormous. Some people say, but Dr. Rima, you're a health advocate. Why are you selling coffee? And the answer is because it's a health food. It's fermented and it's processed without any chemicals, and it's delicious.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rima. Wow, this has been an interesting discussion of a number of topics.
I have to say something else. On video blog number 5, which Ralph just posted on our video blog page, which is called what, Ralph?
The video blog is, let me see, it's right here. Hold on, I've got it up on the screen. It is Dr. Rima, that's not, Dr. for Dr. Dr. Rima Truth vblog.weebly.com. But I've got that on the screen for those who are seeing the archive, and I'm also putting it on the chat.
Good. The last of the video blogs that has been posted is an interview with the head of the Chilean Organic Food Producers Association, a very, very important guy who is very excited about what we're doing. Now, he is a coffee drinker, and we brought a thermos of our Valley of the Moon coffee with us. And he was offering us coffee. So people always offer you coffee at meetings here, or tea. And so we had the secretary bring in empty coffee cups, and he was totally confused. He had no idea what was going on. And we said, please, we'd like you to try our coffee. And we poured our thermos, the contents of our thermos into the cups. And on the video blog, you can see him an organic food producer of great experience for many, many years, tasting our coffee for the first time. It was quite a nice little moment.
Indeed it was. Good video, folks. We're using every method we can to get the message out, and the Dr. Rima Truth Reports, this radio program, and the Dr. Rima Truth video blog, and the regular blogs that we post, and the e-blasts, all of that is part of an overall effort to get the truth out. And we know that that we need your help in spreading the word and getting people to know that this radio program happens every Sunday without fail, that the video blogs are being posted. It's all very important. So, Dr. Rima, in the last 15 minutes of the program, what would you like to focus on?
Well, I'd like to focus on some of the things that are happening in health freedom at the moment. And of course, Joe, you are welcome to comment on them. One of the things that I see, and as a matter of fact, I've sent you, Ralph, a bunch of links, and I'd like to talk about them.
Oh, yeah, let's take a look at them. I can do
yes,
that.
Let me go to the links that I've sent you. First of all, the Spineless, Gutless, Worthless Congress of the United States, with a few possible exceptions, very few, has attached some riders to current bills. The riders have, and this is right now in the committee that is responsible for oversight of the United States Department of Agriculture. The riders are numbers 0011, 0013, and 010. I'm sorry,
Yep.
I read that wrong. 10011, 10013, and 10014. The House Agriculture Committee's discussion draft of the 2012 Farm Bill.
Right, folks, you can get those details if you go to our blog. The most recent Health Freedom blog entry talks specifically about the bill and what Dr. Rima is explaining right now.
Basically, it says the United States Department of Agriculture gives up all oversight and regulation of GMO crops, and it bypasses science review, judicial review, and liability. It exempts the GMO industry, the biotech industry, from judicial, legal, or tort liability, exactly as the vaccine industry is exempted from the same kind of review. So do you want another industry whose intention is not toward your health and welfare? Do you want another industry exempted from any kind of constitutional control and any kind of liability regulation, that no matter what they do to your health, no matter what they do to your environment, no matter what they do to society and seed, they are home free? If that's okay with you, please do nothing. If, on the other hand, it's not okay with you, you need to take action, and the action comes in two parts. One, take the action item by riding your Freedom Mouse, and two, get your entire email list alerted and activated, and tell them that we need them to take action too, or there will be no liability, no redress, no control, no nothing.
You know, Dr. Rima, you're absolutely correct about that. This is another one of those issues. This is the summer surprise. And that's why and while Congress is about to go on vacation and the political silly season is about to get in full swing, they're going to try to sneak this one through on us. So we need to raise the hue and cry on it. It really is important. We have an action item that addresses that. You go to, of course, Pushback Here, and go to the blog entry that we've just posted about these issues. It's entitled Bad Apples, GMOs, and the Precautionary Principle. and explains why this is all not just bad law and bad policy, but of course dangerous to our health. We need to focus in on it. This is going to be an important issue, and it's one that we need to activate the health freedom movement on. Now, that's all.
Absolutely. This is as important as radiation because GMOs corrupt, damage, and distort your DNA and the DNA of future generations. That is the same thing that nuclear power does. That's why we call them genocidal technologies.
It's really interesting, Dr. Rima, when General Bert first identified those 4 technologies, nuclear power, GMOs, and industrial environmental toxins, and the toxins in drugs and vaccines as these genocidal technologies, I noticed that 2 of them had exemptions from liability. Our right to redress for the foreseeable harms caused by vaccines or by nuclear power were taken away from us by Congress. We don't have that right any longer. And now they're about to add GMOs to that list. Maybe they've been paying attention to what General Bert was saying about the genocidal technologies too.
Exactly. That's a very important point. I have something nice to tell you, though.
Please.
I just sent you a link to a musical done by a bunch of young homeschool kids. It's a 3.5-minute musical on surveillance drones. Now, that's not going to happen in your local public school, folks, and that is one of the reasons why homeschooling is under significant attack, because homeschooling, if done properly, teaches kids to think and to inquire and to ask any question that needs to be asked.
Let me put this on.
And then to answer it. So I'm going to read you the words of the little musical that they produced. Some of you are Gilbert and Sullivan fans. My father was a great Gilbert and Sullivan fan, so I grew up with him singing and playing the songs of Gilbert and Sullivan, including the songs of the Mikado. Now, this is called Obamacado, from the Mikado. And in the Mikado, the Grand High Poobah says that he's got a little list, and he's going to get rid of people he doesn't like. He's got a little list, and they'll none of them be missed. They'll none of them be missed. Here are the words that the kids of this homeschool project wrote, and they sing, and they have puppets moving to indicate, and this is coming out of the words of the Obama puppet. As someday it may happen that a conflict we may start, I've got a little list. I've got a little list of America's detractors who might well be blown apart and who'll certainly be miffed. They'll certainly be miffed. There's the oil-owning foreigners whose skin is rather brown. I push a button, then a drone will blow up half their town. All victims who are blown up too, accomplices we'll call. No innocents, just terrorists. We'll classify them all. But wait, the Army's offensive to Congress, I must tell, but not the CIA's. The drones will fit their swell. If the Army flies the drones, then Congress he must sway. So he'll hide the program deep inside the CIA. These are 8-year-olds writing this. There's the radical insider and the others of great faith, and the pro-life activist. I've got him on the list. The whistleblower wiki-leaking into cyberspace. He can't escape my fist. I've got him on the list. The idiot who raises some objection to my plan. The Constitution guarantees due process, he'll demand. Without a trial or a judge to keep the rule of law, you cannot act as jury, judge, and executioner. I'm sad to say, but, little man, your theory isn't true. Due process is just this, a process that I do. And now you're on the list. And now you're on the list. Because the process that he does, that is what due process is. Unfortunately, my phone is ringing.
Well, that was good, though. It's a good segue. Folks, we have 10 more minutes for the Dr. Rima reports. That was very interesting. My experience with homeschooled children is that there's a noticeable difference. Unvaccinated homeschooled children versus the average middle-class government-schooled and heavily vaccinated child.
And now that yes, there is a huge difference. These are unvaccinated children that can think. And let me finish because we're almost done. And now you're on the list. And now, so I'm sad to say, but little man, your theory isn't true. Due process is just this, a process that I do.
Right.
And now you're on the list. And now you're on the list because the process that he does, that is what due process is. And that non-compliant nuisance who is just a waste of space, the nosy journalist I've got on the list, and the bitter people digging to their, the bitter people clinging to their guns and to their faith, they would never be missed. Our drones just do not miss. And those who approve my killing move on foreigners alone will see the state expatriate and hit them with a drone. And in the end, it doesn't matter what they think is true. The drones can kill you both abroad and in the homeland too. For a nation who gives up their rights and has a monarchist may well be on the list. You're all there on the list. He has put us on the list. He has put us on the list. For the tyranny we bought will rule with an iron fist. That's written by 8-year-olds.
Wow.
Educated 8-year-olds.
Yep.
And I suggest watch that link, and I suggest you forward that link.
I'm putting it on Facebook right this minute. That's what I'm doing.
The children dedicated this little musical puppet show that they did with a beautiful parody of the Mikado song, dedicated to restoring constitutional government to the United States of America. They're 8-year-olds.
Wow. All right.
Indeed, they're 8-year-olds.
Nice.
And why aren't we talking like that in large numbers? What in the world is wrong with us? Well, fluoride. And there's been a major study out of, for God's sakes, Harvard University, which says, ta-da, fluoride lowers IQ. Oh, yes.
Ooh, surprise.
It is. And I'm going to send you that link right now so you can put it up on the chat. And then with our IQs lowered and our stupidity index really, really, really high, we note that a man in Oregon has been sentenced to 30 days in jail. Here's the link for that. 30 days in jail for collecting rainwater in 3 barrels on his property.
Was he trying to find out how much radiation was in it?
No, he was trying to water his plants in the midst of a drought.
Drought. Water hoarder.
Water order. You have to understand that all water in the world, according to the global government called the United Nations, all water, every drop of water, fresh, stream, land water, rainwater, ocean water, belongs to the United Nations. So he was stealing UN property. Now, he was put in jail for breaking a 1925 Oregon statute for having an unapproved reservoir. He had 3 rain barrels.
3? It's a reservoir.
The second person that I know of to go to jail for collecting water, one woman in Oregon, in Colorado, I'm sorry, about 2 years ago, was sent to jail for collecting rainwater from the roof of her house that was designed. She has an organic property, and her roof was designed to collect rainwater as a water conservation measure. She did what her house was designed to do, and her house was built with the approval of the zoning board, by the way, and she was sent to jail for taking the United Nations property.
That is a case that needs to be appealed, and to me is a clear case in which the courts might intervene. But of course, if no one raises the issue, we never get to the point where the courts contest it.
Precisely. And then there's the kind of cute little issue of growing vegetables in your front yard. Vegetables are apparently, seeing vegetables leads to indecent exposure. Could it be because vegetables propagate by the use of pollen, and pollen is a sexual reproductive tool? We don't want children to see stamen and pistils and be exposed to pollen, perhaps. So a man and a woman have been fined heavily for having vegetables in their front yard.
Well, they're not. I guess they changed the look and feel of the community, and it's very strange that you don't have a right to grow vegetables in your own front yard. That's all I can tell you.
Because they're unacceptable plants.
Right.
Joe writes, and I'd like him to talk about this. Do we need a drone detector? Can we create a drone detector?
Joe, what? Tell us.
Well, I've been thinking about it. Yeah, I've been working on it for the past year because
I like this guy.
Well, I want you to introduce me to Judge Napolitano, and we can work it out how we can take the drones down.
All right, we'll do that. Well, but that sounds like a fair deal.
Yeah, I found a document in one of the technical network journals talking about security and the fact that the video from drones have been compromised. That you can actually intercept videos from drones. And a Russian software company is selling the software to turn your tuner, your satellite KU band tuner, into a monitoring device for drone videos.
Wow.
So if you can see it on video, and I know the frequency it is, I can put a drone detector on. The key is to know what frequency it's transmitting, and associated with a very directional antenna. That would sense a drone coming in your neighborhood.
Wow,
so it's possible.
Then we need ABMs or something to bring it down. Maybe that's why it's becoming illegal to shine lasers into the sky, because maybe they could be used to disorient and damage drones.
What did you say? What did you say it's becoming illegal to do?
There have been people who've been arrested for shining laser pointers into the sky on the claim that it could interfere with airplanes. If it can interfere with airplanes, I wonder if it could interfere with drones. And if you can lock in on the drone to get the video feed, can you also use that same lock-in system to send a nice beam of laser light to confuse its camera?
Wow.
That's certainly possible, Ralph. My guess is, since the article came out, that they're encrypting a lot of the video feed, but just seeing the presence of RF at that in that spectrum could be enough to indicate at that point in the sky that there is a drone, and then blind it with some 20-watt lasers. I'm not sure how the government would respond to that. You might. I don't think I can point to my buddy Andrew and say blame it on him.
Right.
You got two problems. You got the Nazis in New Jersey, and then you got the normal Nazis.
Right.
Right.
Man, we got it. And of course we would never advocate doing anything illegal, and we would certainly always check in advance and make sure it's legal before we actually do anything. But this is just a theoretical discussion.
Well, no, and
And,
passive action.
and we've reached 12 noon. Dr. Rima, we've reached the end of the Dr. Rima reports. The nice thing about podcasting is that we can run over a couple of minutes. So your choice, but it's time to wrap up.
I want to give you a link that I'd like you to post on the
Sure.
on the chat. This was just sent by Joe. As a matter of fact, it's on the chat with
Joe. I'll get it. Yeah.
It's the Greg Palast article on the Fukushima story you didn't hear on CNN, which
All right.
I've just read while we were broadcasting. This is a story that everyone needs to read. Folks, there is nothing you can trust that you don't know the source of personally. Nothing.
All right, let's put
That's
this.
why we tell you the truth. Joe, it's been a delight having you on the show. I hope we'll have you with us next week when we talk to the professor whom you're bringing to us, whose name is
Sid Johnson.
That would be
Sid
awesome.
Johnson. Dr. Sid Johnson is a nuclear physicist, and he gets it. And we'll be sharing the truth with you. Thank you for being with us on the Dr. Rima Truth Reports. Ralph, thank you so
Wow.
much, as
Great
always.
show. Great show. Thank you,
Great
Dr. Rima.
show, and we'll be back next week with Joe Jesson and Dr. Sid Johnson on the Dr. Rima Truth Reports. Be safe, be free, for God's sake, be skeptical. Taking away our wealth, but we're the men and women following freedom's trail, following where the truth leads, we will prevail. Sneaking up on our freedom.
I think the low bandwidth broadcast is still on, folks. So I'm going to turn that off if I can find it. There it is, low bandwidth. No, that's not the low bandwidth. That's the high bandwidth. Okay, let's try again. Nothing there, nothing there. It's got to be one of these two. All right, stop broadcast. I believe all the broadcasts are stopped. Okay, now.
Joe, that was a great show. Thank you.
That was awesome.
Did you enjoy it?
I don't know if Joe's still on or not.
Oh, okay. I thought that was a great show.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry about that. I just.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it too. I love it. Sounds like good show all around.
I'm just gotta clean these screens out so I can see what's going on here, and I can make sure I save the broadcast. The terrible thing not to save. These are
You know what we should do, Ralph? At the top of the newsletter, the action alert, we should post the archive.
Oh yeah, I think these are getting good, and I think the idea of doing this together, having this discussion about radiation on Sundays for several weeks running with the professor coming on next week, and with this discussion, I think that's going to help move us forward on getting the radiation detection system going. It's going to be really powerful. Now let's see. This is the one. All right, so it's stop the record. Oh, all right. So everybody's trying to reach me. Stop recording.